Welcome back. This is part 2 of my experience of running my first ultramarathon, a 50K race. If you're watching this and haven't watched part 1 of this video, I'd encourage you to go back and watch that first. In this video, I'm going to share with you the second half of my 50K race. I had just finished the first loop, which was about 16 miles, a little bit over 16 miles. So it was between 16 and 17 miles because I had the additional distance of getting to my car. And now I have just gotten back to the beginning of the race. So I've got 16 miles to go. It's taken me about 3 hours to get to this point. And my goal was to complete the ultramarathon in 8 hours. My times for the miles in the first half were pretty good. They were around 10-minute miles overall. I was concerned about whether I would be able to finish in my time frame of under 8 hours. And I had a family commitment that I needed to get to that evening. As I started on the second loop, my breathing was fine. I wasn't tired, but my legs were in a lot of pain. In my mind, the reason for that was I hadn't trained well enough. I wasn't conditioned enough with the muscles and stuff in my legs, and my feet were sore and they were hurting, and it was just painful to take every step. Well, the first mile of the second loop was all uphill. My way of running is usually I will run on the downhill and I'll run on the flats, but I walk uphill. I've read and I've experienced that you exert a lot of energy running uphill, so I just walk up the hills. When I got to the top, again, the muscles were really sore, but when I got to the flat part, I began to run, or I guess I should say trot, because I didn't run very fast. But the thoughts going on in my head at this point was, this is probably the last and only ultramarathon that I'm going to run. That desire of running a 100-mile race is pretty unrealistic, because if I am in this much pain and it's that difficult to run 32 miles, there's no way that I could run 100 miles. And I started to think, I don't know why I wanted to run a 100-mile race to begin with. It's really not that important. There's probably better things that I could do with my life and my time than running the 100-mile race. And I was in a place of just, how do I get through this? How do I finish this race? And it was about taking, one step, putting one foot in front of the other and just continuing the race. I got about halfway through the second loop, and overall, my times had slowed, and in order to finish the race in under 8 hours, I needed to keep it at about 15-minute miles. And the trail was wet and muddy in places. In some places, there were big pools of water. The trail was pretty rocky. I could run for a while, but then when we'd get to the muddy and the rocky place, then I'd have to walk, and sometimes you'd have to go off of the trail. But here's what I found at some point. And this was probably one of the biggest lessons for me in this experience, was I got to the point where I realized that running was actually less painful than walking. And the other thing that I learned was I could run or walk through the pain. So I had learned or been conditioned in my life that when I get to a place where I experience pain, that's the time to stop. And I'd never really push through in any extended way a feeling of pain. I've always took that as, okay, that's telling my body that something is wrong, or I've gone too far, or I can't do anymore and I need to stop. This experience taught me that maybe pain is just part of life, and it's something there that gives us opportunities to learn, and that we can push through the pain and still be okay. So I did that. I was able to, on the last half of the race, to walk when I had to walk, but then run when I needed to run. If you, when you run your race, I would imagine you're going to get to a place where you're going to want to quit, where the pain may be too great, where you're not going to know if it's worth it. So I encourage you to push through and to see if you can identify What are the false beliefs that you have in your life that are holding you back and keeping you from accomplishing all that you can accomplish in your life? The other thing that I found is that each time that I stopped running and then walked for a period of time, the pain to begin to run was actually a little bit greater than just walking. So it would take a conscious effort of making myself begin to run. But as soon as I did, then again, the pain wasn't any worse, and in fact, it was a little bit better than when I was walking. I finished the race, and it turns out that I ran, and I think this is partly due to having to go to my car, 33.8 miles, and I did it in 8 hours and 1 minute. I actually completed the 50K part of the race in 7 hours and 48 minutes. So I beat my goal time by about 15 minutes. So I felt really good about that. But at the end of the race, I was at the place where I had decided that this was it. I wasn't going to do any more ultra marathons, and for sure, I was not going to do a 100-mile race. But guess how long that belief stayed in my head? Within a few hours. So by the evening of that day, I had begun to think, I don't know, maybe I will run a 100-mile race. Maybe I can do that. So what is that about? To me, it was about the pain in the moment affects my commitment and the decisions that I make without the pain. But what I learned is that pain is part of the experience. And so if I want to run a 100-mile race, if I'm going to run a 100-mile race, I need to be at the place where I can embrace the pain, that I can be okay with the pain and realize that that's just part of the experience. I'm putting it out there for everyone that I still have my goal of running a 100-mile race. So right now, my goal is that I'll do another 50K race this year, and the goal is still out there to run a 100-mile race. I hope that my experience can be beneficial to you as you move forward in accomplishing your goals. And if you want to run a 50K race, just know this. Again, so the longest that I had run prior to this was in training. I'd only run about 8 miles. I had run 26 miles years ago, and I had run 22 miles one time a year ago. If I would have trained better, the race, the experience would have been better, but I was still able to push through and to accomplish it. I hope it helps you break through some of the limiting beliefs that you have about yourself and know that we are capable of doing much more than we believe that we can, and especially much more than we believe that we can when we're in the middle of the pain and the discomfort, the challenge or the difficulty of accomplishing the goal as we're moving towards that. Thanks for watching. I'd love to hear your experience of the things that you found in your life that help you in accomplishing your goals. Please comment below and share what you've learned that has helped you, or if there are things that you continue to struggle with, put that down below as well. Make sure that you subscribe to our channel. If you want to know more about who we are and what we're doing, visit our website at principlebasedliving.com. And if you're watching this on LinkedIn, be sure and follow me here.